Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together, seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. Hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 7, the elevations, from verses 82 to 87. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. وَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أَنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. And his people's only answer was to say, expel them from your town. They are purest people. فَأَنْجَيْنَاهُ وَأَهْلَهُ إِلَّا إِمْرَأَتَهُ كَانَتْ مِنَ الْغَابِرِينَ. But we saved him and his family except for his wife. She was of those who lagged behind. وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مَطْرًا فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. And we rained down on them a rain. Note the consequences for the sinners. وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره قد جاءتكم بينة من ربكم فأوفوا الكيل والميزان ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. And to Midian, their brother Shu'aib, he said, O my people, worship God. You have no deity other than him. A clear proof has come to you from your Lord. Give full measure and weight, and do not cheat people out of their rights, and do not corrupt the land once it has been set right. This is better for you if you are believers. وَلَا تَقْعُدُوا بِكُلِّ صِرَاطٍ تُوعِدُونَ وَتَصِدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ من آمن به وتبغونها عوجا واذكروا إذ كنتم قليلا فكثركم وانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المفسدين. And do not lurk on every path making threats and turning away from the path of God, those who believe in him, seeking to distort it. And remember how you were few and how he made you numerous. So note the consequences for the corruptors. وإن كان طائفة منكم آمنوا بالذي أرسلت به وطائفة لم يؤمنوا فاصبروا حتى يحكم الله بيننا وهو خير الحاكمين. Since some of you believed in what I was sent with and some did not believe, be patient until God judges between us, for he is the best of judge. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. The verses are carrying on first with the story of Lot, where he expressed to his people that it is wrong for them to engage in these homosexual acts that they have been doing, and that the punishment of God is imminent if they do not stop. Now notice how they themselves wanted to kick Lot out of his house or out of the city, him and his family, because their response was that these are people who like to stay pure. These are people who like to stay innocent, or they like to purify. And this was something that was not acceptable to them. This is not something that they liked nor that they appreciate. And we could see this in this day and age today as well, when many people, when they are talked about religion, they shy away saying, well, no, you know what, I'm not that kind of a good person. I like being innocent is not something for me. They rather stay in the dirt in their messy mindset, and they try not to be people who are good. Unfortunately, there is this common way of seeing people who are pious or religious that they are somewhat weak. Yes, because there are some sects in the world, unfortunately, that they promote the idea that you have to look at yourself as humble in front of the people rather in front of God. That you have to lower yourself to people to a point where you become a walking mat. And people assume that that's how you're supposed to approach religion, or that you cannot make a stance, or you cannot actually take a position where that you are in confrontation with your people. And God tells us in the Quran on how to deal with the proper style of confrontation, wherein we are not transgressors. So a lot of people as well shy away from the religion because they want to stay in these dirty acts and the way that they do it. But at the same time, if the whole community is engaging in such an action and they're enjoying these actions, it's almost like a burden for them and an annoyance that someone is reminding them and telling them not to do so. So this is where, at this point, instead of asking for God's punishment, these people wanted to transgress against the messenger and kick the messenger out of his house, out of his home, him and his family, because he was reminding them and telling them of God's messages. This is again a line that is a red line that they're not allowed to cross. They're not allowed to ask for God's punishment. They cannot try to kill the messenger, and they can't kick the messenger out for saying the truth. As soon as the transgressors, those people who are being warned, do that, that is enough proof, or that's enough as an action for them to be completely removed and destroyed. So God is telling us, again, in his way that he deals with his messengers, that he will rescue his messengers and then he would destroy them. But we are giving a little caveat here about the believers. The only thing that we realize is in that whole city, there was only one family that was believing, which was the family of Lot, except his wife. His wife obviously committed enough sin that she is not capable of actually being rescued because she was part of the disbelievers. She was part of those that are committing things that are not supposed to be committed. God tells us later in the Quran, she betrayed her husband. We're not very sure in regards to the wife of Lot, what type of betrayal was it? Whether is it of a sexual action or whether that she was not actually being a believer. She's betraying his trust. She's betraying his legacy. She's betraying who he is as a messenger. Now God is telling us that she is also going to be left behind and destroyed. The punishment of said countries or said cities that God has dropped on them, he rained on them, which we understand is clay and other things. It could be asteroids, it could be meteors. Some people can make the argument that it was a volcano, and that volcano, when it erupted, it blew certain things over them. God also tells us that he turned the city upside down and he completely destroyed it, crushed it, and he left from it a very clear sign for those that want to remember. Now we understand that God is very clear that the style or the action of homosexuality is not going to be something that is acceptable, especially as rampant and as in the open as the people of Lot. So these are, again, crimes that we're not supposed to commit and crimes that we have to stop, especially when it becomes on a societal level, where it becomes something that is so widespread as we see it in this day and age. But there is an interesting point that we also have to recognize. So God has already predetermined when an asteroid is going to hit a certain people, for example, or that when a major earthquake is going to occur. God perfectly times it with those within God perfectly times it wherein that city is supposed to be destroyed for its transgressions. So God is showing us that even before the humans technically were even in existence, he knew at exactly what points they're going to become very transgressive and wrong, and God has already prepared something for them. So it's like, imagine you're driving in a car and God has already placed something so that when you would land at an exact same point, you get destroyed. But God knew that you were going to be at that place at that time. And right before that incident appears, God is giving you your last final warning that, look, the path that you're on is incorrect. If you carry on with this path, you're going to be met with an asteroid or a wall, or you're going to get really hurt. This is the time where you need to change your path and go back to something that is more sustainable for you and more pleasing to your Lord. And as soon as they deny the messenger that is telling them such words, they meet the fate that they were driving towards. So God is very gracious. God is very merciful. Him sending these messages, sending these messengers, is his way of trying to put us back on the path that is going to save us from the pain and the humiliation that some of these people endured. And then moving on, we go to the next story of the messenger by the name of Shu'aib. He went to his people, which God tells us the people's name is Midian at this point, and he tells us their crime. Their crime is something that is very clear. And again, something that is happening to us consistently. It's this hustle mentality where they do not give full measure and weight, and they cheat people out of their rights and their belongings. So there's always this game and this manipulation for them to always try to beat the other person from what is legally theirs. So the concept of justice or fulling the measure is not something that they were practicing admirably. They were not paying attention to this. So it was the concept of scamming people of what they had. Now, again, in this world that we're living in this day and age, we see that this is something, again, that is very rampant. There are all these schemes and these procedures that is designed for you to lose your money and to lose your property in a way where you did not really have much of a chance. This is not only from a personal level, but it's getting to a point where even the governments are scamming their people, and the people within the governments are setting up procedures and systems that is designed to hurt their own people by taking away from their properties and rights. You could clearly see, for example, Somebody who buys a house outright and he has paid 20 to 30 years his house, he could retire and then he still owes taxes every year on that house. And if he starts to fall behind on paying the government for his own house, then the government can take that house. So eventually, no one has the ability to truly own land for many generations other than those that are already established in very strong and persistent positions in the world. So we could clearly see that the system is set up in a way that resembles on what is being told to us here. And God is also telling us that the people of Shu'aib, not only that they were cheating people out of their money, but they were also corrupting in the land. And this is something that we consistently see with these superpowers. They're always oppressing their neighbors. They're always oppressing other people to take their resources, to take what they have from them, and then try to keep their power within their own communities. I'm talking about the elites, by oppressing their own people. And God is also telling us that these people, because of the way that they approach life, all they wanted to do is as well to block people from God. Because it is very clear that when I am being cheated, I'm going to sit and invoke things in regards to religion and show the person that it's completely wrong and I don't like it and don't do that to me. But then when I am doing it for somebody else, I don't consider those verses anymore. It's almost like how people hide behind the path of God only when it is something that can be helpful to them. But when they are the ones who's transgressing, this is the time when they don't remember it. So they start to set up these situations and these ways, and so that they would block people away from the path of God. And then they can go as far as hurting and killing people who are sitting and trying to find the path of God. This distortion we completely see almost daily in a way that they brainwash people and so that they would not accept what God has revealed to people or for what God wants people to act. Because the path of God is living and thinking in a certain way. This Quran is teaching us on how to live and how to think for us to find the straight path. And this is the path to God. And this is the path that God has enforced the humans on, or what he wants the humans to be on. So some people start to distort it. They say, well, no, it's like having trade or me having an ability to charge you interest is like trade, because I'm just trading my resources with you. And this is a type of distortion when God says that trading is legal, but usury is not legal. That's oppression. So they start to decorate what they do in so that they would distort the message of God, and so that they would try to accomplish and fulfill what they want to fulfill out of their own vices and their own agendas, which again does not align with what God has told us. And then, of course, God is telling us that we should observe the consequences of those who did that before us. Unfortunately, us as people, we don't really look at history in a way so that we can learn from history. We learn in what happened in the events, but we do not apply these lessons on ourselves. Sometimes we see history repeating itself time and time again, and the same results is appearing time and time again. And someone has made the comment that in history that stupidity is doing the same thing twice and expecting different results. Now, when God has already predetermined that the results of transgression and oppression and moving away from the God and trying to block people from the path of God is always met with destruction, we clearly see this happening time and time again. And notice how here Shu'aib is telling them the blessings of these people. They were few in numbers and God has increased them. So God has given these people the resources and the abilities to sustain even a larger community and a larger population. And the way that they were giving their thanks and showing their gratitude is by denying God and the very existence of what God has been telling us to do and what we shouldn't be doing. Rather, they started to set up their own system that is antagonistic to what God wants us to accomplish, and they met their destruction. But as well, Shu'aib is telling them something that we should keep in mind, which unfortunately the transgressors cannot comprehend. That you do not need to believe in what I have to say. And just because there's a portion that believed in what I have said as a messenger, then there has to be now an understanding that we allow God to judge between us. You do not need to transgress against me. You do not need to kill me. You do not need to kick me out. Here, Shu'aib he's imploring his people to practice the patience just because there's two opposing views. And we allow God to judge between us, and God can judge between us in a way where none of us needs to be destroyed. He can just produce a very clear sign and very clear evidence that this side is right and the other side is wrong. And if they deny that verse, then God will deal with that destruction. But trying to attack me, to censor me, and to shut me up is not going to be something that is beneficial for you, especially if it's someone that is reminding of God and talking about God and imploring the elites of his city to not transgress and to remember God correctly. So we are still exploring and learning more about what God has given us in his tradition and how he deals with the transgressors. We're learning the both sides of the system of those that are receiving the messenger, and we are also learning about what the messenger endures and those who believed with the messenger. So one of the traditions of God when he does send the messenger is that he rescues them. And we could see this clearly happening. Noah was rescued with a ship. Hud was also rescued out of his city. Salih was rescued out of his city after God has put everyone else in their houses with this earthquake that he has sent them. Lot was rescued out of the city before the destruction, and Salih and Shu'aib, we're also going to assume that he's going to be rescued, because this is something where God has promised his messengers. And keeping this in mind, you as a believer, when you are recognizing God's sunnah or God's tradition being carried out in front of you in a superpower or in people who are transgressive, you have to believe and assume, because it is the correct type of assumption, that God is going to rescue you, and God is not going to allow you to go through the pain of those people as long as you are one who is on the right path and believing what God has told us. The way that you could measure that is by reflecting on the Quran and seeing where do you stand in the Quran. The Quran is not just you practicing theory and what the mental words are being presented to you, but rather it's practicing the religion and applying what God has told us in between each other in the senses of what these moralities that have, the lack of morality that these nations that God has told us that ended up having them being destroyed. So this is where we keep our eyes open. We remove ourselves from certain sins and certain obscenities. We fulfill the measures. We fulfill the dues. We do not call or invoke upon anyone other than God for help and for assistance. We only serve God. And at that point, you are a lot closer to the path than what these people were practicing at the end of their lives. And with that said, all praise to our Lord, the Lord of the worlds. Peace be upon you.